Well, hello and welcome to the third webinar in our Esports Leadership Series 2021. Thank you all for joining us here. My name is Brice. I've been a member of the panel for quite a while now, and I'll be helping you bring all the discussion you need to know as we go through everything we have tonight. I've been in esports for quite a while, mostly known for my hosting and commentating, but I've done a ton more behind the scenes. But the most important thing is we get to go behind the scenes of the Esports Award tonight. So we are very excited to bring you this special webinar curated by the Esports Awards team. Featuring some of the Esports Awards panel, today we'll be talking through the Esports Awards panel process, giving you a behind-the-scenes view on how the awards work. But before we begin, I would like to invite Michael Ashford, Managing Director of the Esports Awards, to kick off proceedings.
Thank you, Brice. Good afternoon or good evening to everyone watching at home, depending on where you are joining us from. Thanks for tuning in for tonight's event. Firstly, I just wanted to acknowledge our host for the evening, Mr. Brice. Brice is the longest standing member of the panel and someone who's helped to shape the awards tremendously. A huge thank you for all of your support over the last 6 years. This event is incredibly special for myself and all of our team. It's the first time we've actually managed to run a B2B event that focuses on the Esports Awards and our process. It's also the first time there has been a behind the scenes event with the Esports Awards panel, giving viewers the chance to hear from those who make things happen for us. What they look at when they're adjudicating, and what are some of their favourite moments during the Esports Awards campaign, and some of the standout memories from over the years. Now, I am aware some members of our lovely panel are listening in, so I don't want to inflate egos too much, but I have to say we are incredibly honoured and proud that our panel consists of industry experts across the board, those that have cultivated and created the industry that we all love and care about. Every panel member volunteers their time on a yearly basis to ensure that recognition is given and that excellence is definitely recognised. I also just want to take a moment to speak about the launch of the 2021 Esports Awards campaign. You can tune in next Wednesday at 9 PM BST and 1 PM PDT to catch the first show of 2021. It's hosted by Captain Flowers and MobileMatt, and it's certainly not one to be missed. We've got some incredible guests, including Alex Golden Boy Mendez and WWE superstar Xavier Woods. Nominations will also be launching on the light, and we hope you'll be able to join us for it. Before we get to that show, we do need to throw back to Brice to kick off tonight's proceedings.
All right, thank you very much, Mike. I do appreciate the introduction there. Yes, I have been part of the panel for quite a while. Tonight, though, we will be hearing from our esteemed panel members from the Esports Awards. They will give you an exclusive look at how the process actually runs. At any point, if you do have a question, write it into the comments. We will try to get through it as we go through the show. If you can keep your questions, though, related to the topic at hand, that would be very, very helpful and we would be appreciative. Now, we will be hosting a networking session, as I have said, after the webinar ends. This will be going on around 9 PM GMT. We hope to see you there. This will take place on Zoom, and the link is in the bio below, as well as posted in the chat. So, having been a member of the Esports Awards panel since its inception in 2016, I have seen the evolution and growth of the awards, and it has been brilliant to be a part of. Some background for those of you who don't know. Fortunately, I'm in a very good position to tell you this. It is currently split into separate panels. We have our chair and our vice chair who help move new members into the voting process and also help chair the meetings to make it all go in an orderly fashion, which is something very necessary when you have a panel this big and so much to talk about the award night. So we make sure that those two keep everything running pretty smoothly. They are, of course, a part of the council, a higher level members of the panel, which help basically decide a lot of things that just work in the background, how the awards should be distributed, whether or not awards should be moved, how other panel members are interacting and engaging with the awards, as well as anything that involves math or behind the scenes stuff that doesn't need a full panel to deal with. So that's our council panel. Then we have our full panel. Basically everybody who gets a vote and engaged with the discussion on the awards and the nominations and the shortlist and the criteria for everything we decide here at the Esports Awards. It is a giant panel. I believe it's swelled to some crazy number, like 40 people this year from all over the industry, from people on camera to behind the camera, tournament organizers to just organizations themselves, agencies, lawyers, everybody, to help figure out exactly who should be winning these prestigious awards. And then we even have a separate panel, a creative panel. For those of you who look at videographer or photographer of the year, we have experts to help decide that as well. But that's enough for me. And speaking of experts, it is now my great pleasure to start introducing our members for tonight. I will give them an introduction and then they can talk about themselves a bit and tell you who they are because they know better than me. So first up, let me introduce Skyler Johnson, founder of Envy and Paper Crowds, co-founder of Drink Control and art director of Four Seasons.
You're the man, Brice. Appreciate it. I got to get as good as you. Skyler Johnson here. Been in the esports scene about 14 years, from pro player to now getting into, I guess, developing businesses and really business strategies. Very fortunate to be a part of the Esports Awards. I was there last year for the first time on the panel, looking to extend this as long as I can, just to be able to be a helping hand inside the community, as well as help the other panel members along the way. So again, thank you, Brice, and looking forward to this one.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for joining us. Next, of course, we have MobileMatt Rutledge, co-owner of the Aftershock Media Group.
Hey, Brice, you appreciate it, man. Like you mentioned, I had the huge pleasure of being the mobile representative here at the Esports Awards, and was able to help, guide this series into the mobile platform this past year. We had 2 mobile awards that were a first, actually, for the award show. It was the Esports Mobile Game of the Year and Esports Mobile Player of the Year. And I just can say, first of all, the award show just did a phenomenal job to represent mobile so authentically as a platform. So excited to share a little bit more detail about the process on this call and dive into some more details on the mobile side.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you for joining us as well. Next up, we have Phil EE Visu, esports commentator who has worked on Melee, Brawl, Project M, Wii U, Ultimate, and NBA 2K.
Hey, what's going on, Brice? Thank you so much. Yeah, man, I've certainly been around for quite a while in the esports space. Kind of turned commentator to streamer as of late, and I definitely am honored to be a part of the Esports Awards panel. Simply because for me, I find it to be like a space where I get to learn even more about other esports that I'm not as familiar with, and also bring like my take to fighting games and Smash in general. So happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, we're happy to have you. Thank you so much for joining us here. Next up, James O'Connor, president and founder of the Knights.
Hey, thanks for having me. Excited to be here. I've been in esports for about 21 years. So Counter-Strike, I've lived it. And so everything with FPS games. So excited to support the awards and kind of highlighting people that do great things in the space and build the space.
Awesome. Well, hopefully we can get through some of that tonight and bring your opinion and see how we go. But last but not least, our very last speaker for tonight, Kyle Freedman, commentator, analyst, and former American Professional Heroes of Newerth and Dota 2 player.
Hey, everybody. Yeah, I'm Kyle. Dropped out of community college in 2010 to go pro at Heroes of Newerth. Could argue we were the best, but unfortunately the game died. I joined the panel because I represent Dota 2, and I figured it was time we started winning some awards. Happy to be here, and nice to be around people more important than I am.
Oh, I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's true, but thank you very much for joining us here, of course. Well, let's get straight into our first topics. And this first one, right, it's an interesting one. The panel process 2021. There's been a lot going on in the background, lots of discussions about how we improve the awards every single year. So we're going to go through this process now and talk about how an award is typically judged and what are the steps taken. Now, it's quite an open award, so I'm going to jump to you, Skyler, first of all. It was your first year on the panel last year. But what's your initial thoughts on this?
I love it. I think the community vote is always so intriguing because you can have someone that doesn't submit nearly as much as volume of work, but they'll just show up. The community shows up heavy, especially like Brazil, Spain. You could see like someone with a body of work that has like limited amount of showing, but their community reps hard. And I think that's one of the best things is you get to find out how much this community just rallies behind certain individuals. And then the process of it in terms of going, for me, it makes me take that individual more serious than I would have and say, hey, let's really dive into those smaller bodies of work compared to someone that's presenting a bunch to you. I'm a big fan overall of the process, but I'm also learning about just different games along the way. Things I never would have known, like mobile. Now I feel like I'm hitting up Matt on the side almost every day. Well, frequent to learn about mobile, just so I can dive into it.
Well, that's actually a great segue. Matt, let's quickly talk about that because this is about how the process goes through. And obviously, you've come into the Esports Awards and they've kind of jumped into mobile, like both feet first, right? Trying to bring it more to the forefront of what the Esports Awards actually is. What kind of surprised you about the process?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'd say, first of all, Esports Awards is the foremost award show for the esports industry. It just carries such a weight and respect for being nominated, for winning, and also for being a member that is part of the process of, who gets chosen, right? So I think the first impression that I had when I joined the Esports Awards panel was just the amount of respect and integrity that all of the members of the panel have, and how seriously that they're taking this, because there is a responsibility that comes with being a panel member. You are representing your industry, your niche, your game, and you have to put all personal biases aside and try to make a case for why it's important just as a whole from an objective perspective. And so when I did that from a mobile industry perspective, I was really trying to talk about the impact that mobile as a category has made all around the world, because it is in large part a regional impact for some games like Free Fire and their impact that they've made in Brazil as an example. And to Skyler's point, when you see the numbers of how many people came out to support their members, their content creators, their players, and their game in these award categories, it is just gonna knock your socks off. The Brazilian audience is so passionate about Free Fire as a title, and they really showed up and represented as well. So, but yeah, my first impression is, first of all, just like so much weight and respect that all the members really take upon themselves when they operate and go through the panel process.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's get into the kind of the more structure of it, right? So, Kyle, a little bit of a difficult one here, but the very first thing that happens from your point of view when we come to start actually discussing the brass tacks of, right, who's being nominated and the actual process behind that, and your perspective on it.
It's pretty straightforward, I would say. I think the main point is that pretty much everybody that's on that's a part of this process is just kind of an esport lifer. I look at you guys. I don't know a few of you, but I know of you because we've been around for like a decade at minimum. So most of the time you're just kind of staying in touch with what's happening. And, if you follow all of the games, you're going to say, this team's been popping off, like they deserve discussion. I'm not a part of the initial narrowing down of the field, but I would imagine you just kind of point out who you think stands out. And then when it actually comes time to vote, it's just an open discussion, round table. I think all of our calls went late.
Yes.
We never ended on time, but people had passionate cases. I know I certainly stand all of my boys in Dota. We finally got some awards. I was pretty hype about that. We had Team Secret just kind of crushing everybody, but I don't follow every game, just like you guys don't follow every game. So we pretty much, you just kind of you just do it. I don't know. It's not really. I don't know how to describe it as a process. We just talk about it until we decide.
Yeah. It's fun. Like I said, it's one of these ones where there is, and I could probably help fill in here a little bit before we move on. There is, in my mind, several sections of how we go through the year, and it doesn't always make sense to people out loud because sometimes the nominations happen quite early in the year, but we can have late nominations. It goes from the public first. We get all that information to us sent in the panel in our giant calls. There is giant Discord calls full of people for hours, as Kyle was pointed out. And then we go through several steps, right? First of all, we got to go through and basically eliminate anyone who shouldn't really be there from the public voting, if they're in the wrong category or they've been voted wrongly. Then we kind of decide on our nominations shortlist while keeping a caveat that this is going to be a few months and we can always change it later on. There are some base discussions around the call when it's a little bit more of a we don't have to worry too much about it because usually there's some very, very good cases and we've just got to try and eliminate the people that really shouldn't be there. And then everything just kind of sits for a while as the nominations have gone in. And obviously there are some special ones like the award, the Esports Event of the Year, which goes super late just in case because of obviously events happening. And then we go into what I like to call the real voting point, right? And that's when everybody's on the screen. We have to talk about every single person. We have to figure out whether or not their achievements, accomplishments for whatever category they are in are reasonable and whether they should have won. Do they just get nominated? And being nominated is obviously a great thing in itself. Or do we say, well, here are the criteria, which is the best of the best and which deserves to win? We hear from experts, like I said, across the industry, and we start to get down to a vote. The best thing about it, in my opinion, though, and I'll let you weigh on this, James, but people might not know, it's a blind vote. Nobody actually knows from the panel who wins until we come to it.
Yeah, thanks. First, the answer is yes, as far as I can tell. But first, I'd like to just talk about my experience with the panel.
Yeah.
I thought it was an honest attempt to figure things out. If I could just So I came in as a curious observer, as an old man who took 3 years away from gaming and who's building a company in it and taking my time. And when I came in it, I say, who are these people? Who are you guys? Who are the people behind it? I know I recognize some of the names behind it, but esports has grown so much that I just really, I wanted to go from my own personal viewpoint and integrity check. As anybody would, that's like, who are these people? How are you selecting these people? Just is this real, or is this something I don't want to be a part of?
Yeah.
And I can tell you the first thing I thought was, wow, this is a lot of work. This is a lot of work. You guys are killing it on how much time you're putting in. And I got worn out by how much work it was, because I haven't cut my hair. I barely am ready for this interview. I work like 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. Honestly, because esports takes that. And so, especially founding a company and building it, so much work that we have to do personally. And so when the weight of what you ask your judges to do is a significant commitment. And I think that should be outlined as something that is, don't accept it if you're not ready, because it's in the responsibility. And then the second thing is, I think it's a very complex thing that you guys are dealing with, because you guys have to deal with, I'll only speak for myself, 20 years of history that you have to kind of capture and honor and respect, because some of this stuff wasn't around, simultaneously juxtapositioned with what's happening now that's topical and relevant, with also basically just understanding the politics and the power that you throw yourself into, where the people are sitting there who are angry that they're either not a part of it, or they're just too proud to ask because you should know who they are, or just like, or they feel humble, or they're just disconnected from it all, or because and then you have the newcomers that are people that are just sitting there saying, like, I want to be a part of this. I have so much, they're so current in the industry knowledge. And you have this crazy mix of people that are trying to, like, obviously garner power. And I'll just speak on one thing. When I left gaming in 2012 and I came back, there was a completely different set of power brokers, because of the economy just crashed in 2008. It came back. So many people that were in power before, like, when I say power brokers, I mean people that had invested their whole lives into this. And so when I came back and looked at this, I'm trying to figure out, like, who are these guys and how do I get involved, and how do I take myself out of the day-to-day 18 hours of operations and have a little bit of public-facing understanding of what's happening and what's culturally relevant. And so when I looked at this, I just want to just say, I think the first thing I would say is, I felt that it was honest, and you have so much that you guys have. Maybe I'd like to put a signal out, come, apply, be involved, all the old heads and the new heads, give them a volume of people, of judges, to even increase that to select from. And then two, if you get accepted to that awesome opportunity, or asked back, know that there's a lot of integrity that they try to place into this, and you're building it. And so I just am thankful to be a part of it, and how to serve it in any way that I can. And that's my perspective coming in.
Awesome. All right. Well, I find that kind of moves on to our second topic, and I'll bring this in, and I'll bring Visu in now for this one. So we need to talk about what it's like becoming a panel member, or being a panel member, right? Explaining your involvement and what it means to you. So Visu, we'll start you off, because we didn't really get you on that last one.
Well, I mean, for me, the way I actually think I became a panel member was, I was just vocal on Twitter, because I remember seeing some of the categories, the people up for nominations, and I didn't see anyone from, like, the Smash community, and I was a little tight about that, because I was like these players are doing like historic things, like, in our game, like they're winning tournaments, dominant win streaks, and just kind of like creating their own era. And I was like, well, I don't think there might be anybody on the panel who's able to really represent the Smash Bros community, or like games in general. So I just made a simple tweet and just asked, what's the process behind getting on the panel, and then somebody responded in the DM to me and gave me an application, and I submitted, and the rest was history. And it was actually really cool, because I think sometimes, like, people see things take place and it's like, oh, well, there's really nothing I can do about it. But just looking at how the Esports Awards was structured, I was just thinking to myself, I mean, these are obviously like gamers. They're like cool, chill people. Like, why wouldn't they care enough to hear somebody else out? And sure enough, they did. So when I got accepted to the panel, it was getting just thrown into the fire in like the first meeting, because I have to admit, like I knew a lot of people, and obviously I knew the games they were talking about, but I didn't know like all the in-depth conversations that we were having. So for me, I was like soaking in a lot of information. I would chime in here or there, but I found it so valuable that we actually had so many meetings take place. And I love the fact that you guys actually like schedule this stuff like a week out in advance. Like bless her, Hannah was sent out the doodles and stuff like that for us to fill out and let us know when we're available and stuff like that. So I just really appreciate like the actual effort that goes into it, because we have like real meaningful discussions. And even it's interesting because we talk about like nice, and I'll see somebody whom I recognize. I'm like, oh man, I really hope they get it. And then somebody will make like a crazy compelling argument. I'm like, damn, they don't really deserve it, do they? So, it's kind of crazy how that goes, but like just the process in general, it's been an honor to be a part of.
Yeah, can I chime in real quick just to echo
funny
that?
enough, I was going to throw it to you anyway, Carl, to kind of build on that point, speaking about it. And just before we go with that, it's actually a really great point. I want to say to Visu there. It's 100%, right? Because I've been around for a while. What we want on the Esports Awards, we want people to come in and fill those knowledge gaps. And the Esports Awards in the past has been criticized. And then here's the thing, right? I've been in the background for a long time, but I've also, and I'm sure anybody actually behind the scenes will tell you, I've also pushed for the same thing. People like the members of this panel right now are the reason why they push for recruitment every single year. It's the reason we want to improve the Esports Awards year on year. And you are right, there have been gaps for past. And obviously, Kyle, you're going to jump in right now and say pretty much the exact same thing, right? You helped fill the gap we had in Dota 2.
Indeed, and also shout out to Hannah, because I swear these meetings are the only thing in my life I book like more than a week in advance. And I've been doing broadcasts for like 4 years. But yeah, pretty much what E was saying. I'll use a League of Legends comparison. Dota people don't really get unless you're a Dota fan. You play nothing else. But we had this guy Nisha for Team Secret, who's #1 in the world right now, switch from bottom lane to mid, win every tournament. They won 7 consecutive grand finals, 3-0. And I was like, damn, like this is absolutely insane. I've got to go and like tell people what's happening, because I think it's a lot like Smash, where this is a very insulated community. You are a huge fan of this game, and the esport world at large just might not care nearly as much. So you gotta rep your scene and see if it stacks up in comparison to the world at large.
And Kyle, 100%. I gotta say, man, your segment that you like went off on Dota and talking about all these teams and stuff, like I wish that these panel calls were broadcast sometimes for exactly your speech. Like that was really awesome to hear, man. Definitely a highlight of the year.
I prepared more for that than I do most of my broadcast appearances.
It's serious. It's serious work, right? Like you got to be aware that everybody in there is pretty much ready to call you out on anything you say, because they're all experts, right? Everybody's pushing basically their expertise into this big panel and saying, hey, well, this guy deserves more, or this event was better than this event, or this team was great but not good enough to actually win an award this year. Skyler, let's jump to you very, very quickly and talk about what it's for you like being involved, what it means to you to kind of be part of this process.
Just fortunate, like there's so many people that have done what we've done right along the way, and I think it's just always watching it from the outside is so much different from being internally. Like just seeing the way how passionate people are. I became a secret fan because of Kyle. Probably doing he did this rant. He was talking me about like these 7 tournaments, and then I started diving into it, researching these like just things I didn't know. It's just being fortunate to be a part of it. I think is you sit back and you say, wow, esports. You think you know everything, right? Or like you try to get in that mindset of, oh yeah, I know what's going on here or there. I knew nothing about Dota, right? Like I thought I did, but I knew nothing about Dota or even Smash, right? Some of these games that you don't know represent or have this hardcore fan base still or whatever. It's all constant learning for me. And, when I'm in my FPS world, right, just paying attention to all things like Counter-Strike or COD or whatever the case may be, just learn. Same with Rocket League. It was so phenomenal to learn about Rocket League and that now like actually follow it and, see where that game is progressing and stuff. I think that's the biggest thing is just education for myself, but then also just really deep diving, because you don't want to, you don't want to sit there and just pretend like you know in these things, because people are going to call you out. And I think that's one of the most humbling things, right? Is for someone to be like, actually, that's not true because of this. And it's like, wait a minute, I really got to make sure I do my research and come prepared, because people aren't scared. You have some voices in there. You have some people that are really worth their opinion. You one of them, right? Like, you're not going to sit back.
Yeah. I am one of them. I didn't know if you were going to bring that up, but yeah.
But that's how it has to be, because I think that's the representation, right? And like, just to be able to grow and be a part of that is just phenomenal. And then I think also the amount of the vast variety of people we have, and that just keep coming in. I'm sure you've seen people probably come and go that fit the mold, which is cool, because you can kind of tell like what's working and what isn't. And I think you're also good at gauging time, which we probably got to pass this one, but you're good at navigating the calls a little bit. Like, hey, maybe we should all step away, and then next time, we'll come back and make sure we cover that. So.
Yeah, it's 100% a part of the process. Like I said, everybody here that kind of volunteers the time, and everybody in the panel who volunteers the time, are obviously very, very busy people. And I made the joke last time. I said I'd dread to think of the actual bill you get if everybody charged for all the hours of work they put into this. I'm going to quickly move on now, because we still have got a ton to cover. But this is about the new panel members. Now, I've been told that we are announcing the new panel members and everybody who's joining us this year. I believe there's also a graphic that we can throw up to talk through who the new panel members are. And I'll quickly go through that. So here are the new panel members for 2021. We have Zoe. I'm not going to be able to say all of the names, but we have Zoe. We have Cody, Rachel, Sue, John, Arton, Raymond, or I just know him as Rambo. We have Golden Boy, of course, Shiva. We have Matt Podoff, better known as Burns. We have Anexide, Michelle Adesani, and Mark Chang. They are all joining our main panel this year for 2021. But as we talked about before we went into this deep discussion, we also have a separate panel. The creative panel is also getting 4 new members now: Paul McMahon, Joey Thimian, Caleb Lay, and John D. Hart. So we've already grown the panel by 17 people this year alone. Obviously, we said goodbye to some this year, and here's the funny thing. This is about behind the scenes, right? When this was being discussed about who to approach and who the new panel members are, there was a huge list of people. And one of the things that gets spoken about is how do you become a panel member? And it's a little bit this, so I can fill in this little bit for you. Essentially, all the panel will vote yes or no on whether or not they think a panel member should join. We get the percentages, it goes up to the council, and we figure out who is a good fit, who should join, where our knowledge gaps are, and so on and so forth, and we reach out. For the vast majority of people this year, almost nobody was turned away, but they were reached out to. We were actually expecting about 8. We were expecting 8 new members. We kind of guessed that. We got 17. So obviously we are very, very happy with that. So it's going to be a very big call this year as well. But now moving on to our next category for this one, I'd like to bring James O'Connor back in for it quickly, because I think it's something you touched on earlier in this. Why is it important to recognize legacy and the recognition of the history?
So, I grew up, I'll take you back for a moment, and I don't want to sound like, I know I have a beard, I haven't shaved and all that stuff, so I look like old, and I just turned 40, but I'm young at heart. I can tell you that when I first started playing Counter-Strike it was 2000 in November when retail came out, I started watching people that like Heaton and Potty and those guys for Counter-Strike, and some of the people you've already featured. And I started I've seen, I think the importance is that you guys are able to have jobs in this space, me too. But for the long period of time, things like the Esports Awards really weren't a thing, because there wasn't even enough money to fund any of this to actually be a thing. So I just think that that's cool. And that you almost, before you can almost move forward, there's so many people and so many things that it's like you kind of have to go back a little bit to go forward, to really create something sustainable and to kind of honor and capture a legacy. So like, just to parallel this to just like what I'm doing at the Knights, we do events all the time, but it's just one event after event or team. Like, there's no legacy. So when you think of, like, if you listen to the Steelers content, who are our investors and partners, and you hear, like, humor me, just like you hear like the 75th annual Steelers, they've won X championships. Like, they start and they write their content and their narrative on the history of what they built. And I think that when we're talking about esports and we're championing some of the people that may have already been done, I just think that I credit to the responsibility that I think that you guys have, and that I felt that you were attempting and did honor with a significant amount of work, was just that you have to capture the history of that and build the narrative, which you have to kind of, it's the Esports Awards to me, and is to capture a little bit of the past to bring forward the future. And if you do that, you'll have a really compelling narrative and you'll have more meaning for it. And I think that you're doing that. And that's just what it meant to me. And I am excited for some of the people that you even have on your panel, that I recognize a couple of them that were I believe are strong investors to the space. So I think what last piece on that, I just think it's about acknowledging and honoring some of the people that have done a significant amount of work in the space, and really championing the work that they did. And I think that's part of what your ethos is, and I'm excited that it is there.
Also, I appreciate it. I kind of mirror those exact thoughts. I think realistically, one of the things it's very easy to criticize, right? It always is very easy to criticize. And people talk about, just how much his work is done behind the scenes and everything else. For me, personally being involved with this for as long as I have, the reason I'm still involved is because pretty much every time that I have complained about a subject, or I have jumped down the throat of people down the Esports Awards and say, hey, I don't like this. This is not right. It shouldn't be happening. It's been taken on board and it has been improved. Right. And I think that's incredibly important. You are right. This is a very serious thing. It's a very serious thing for me a lot of the time when I talk about the Esports Awards, saying, hey, nobody else is giving us awards. There are other award things in the space. And I think most of the time they get it wrong because they just don't care. And if you're on the panel, most of the time you can tell these people care about esports. And that's why when it comes to discussion and when we figure out who is supposed to win this award, you've got to make sure you're judging it correctly by the correct criteria. I don't care about people's biases. I don't care whether or not you think somebody should win because their scene is developing or whatever. It's always coming down to this must be the winner, and you must be able to defend it to just about anybody. Obviously, there can be discussions. There can be other people come through, but I take this incredibly seriously. And I know an awful lot of the panel do as well, which leads me on to my next point. What is our favorite award? And I'll jump straight to Matt for this one.
Oh man, well I have two, and you can probably guess which two they are. But
yeah, this one's kind of an easy one. Yeah,
but I'll say, my favorite one, if I had to pick one, was the Esports Mobile Player of the Year. Just being able to share the stories of some of the most prominent and most successful mobile esports players around the world with the panel members was just such a special thing to be able to get to do. There's just so much incredible work going on in the mobile esports industry, and just because of regionality or difference of language, or just, mobile as a whole is a little bit siloed. It's kind of its own scene, right? So it doesn't really have much crossover with other platforms sometimes. So being able to bring some of those stories to light was a really awesome experience.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm going to ask every single member of our panel because I think it's a great question. Visual, let's go to you next. What's your favorite award?
My favorite award? We go through so many of them. If I had to decide, probably like PC. Yeah, I would go with PC Player of the Year, because for me, it's just it comes down between there's so many talented individuals in so many different games. It's well, who has really done enough to really usurp the next guy who's right there, right? So I always find that to be pretty lively and entertaining discussion. And honestly, there's always a part of me too that last time was kind of giggling about the fact of Fortnite trying to take it off. I was in the back of my mind, I was any Fortnite player is probably gonna win this stuff. But it's still just the discussion in general for that is one of the things I enjoy the most.
Yeah, fair enough. James O'Connor, favorite award?
PC Player of the Year for me.
Oh, fair enough. Then pretty much the same as EE. Kyle, what about you?
PC Player is definitely up there, but I'd say Team of the Year, because I think that's going to be your most nuanced discussion. And trying to compare teams and games you don't really follow versus teams you stand hard for is always going to be really difficult. I think this year was 8 or 9 different games represented, and that's the essence of you've it forces us to critically think. I dropped out of college to avoid that at all costs, but you've got to try and think okay, well, what's more impressive? We're ranking the game. It's well, how dominant were they? Did they win the title? How much of this was offline? Was it international or regional only? And I think we had an hour discussion about that one, because it's just it's kind of always up in the air, and a lot of personal bias will play a role. And that one, I think this year could have probably gone to 4 different teams.
Yeah, That's always a very tense discussion when it comes down to it, because like you said, exactly right. You're trying to quantify like what winning in different regions is, and winning in these different esports, right? It's all different. It's all relative, and you have to figure it out with the experts involved. Skyler, what is your favorite award? Skyler, I think you've muted yourself.
This is why you're better than I. This is why you're wrong. I'll probably say creative piece of the year, just because bias, right? I love seeing like the passion that people pour into their creativity. Obviously, that's a newer. And then lifetime achievement. I think lifetime achievement is something we should all strive to be on, right? Like last year, I remember advocating hard for Jonathan Wendell, first esports player I ever seen. Like just looking at his Quake montages and playing COD 4 back in the day, looking at someone like that, you're like, oh wow, that's what I'm trying to do, And I'd probably say lifetime achievement, just because there's been so many people in that lifetime achievement that have really poured their souls into esports, and I think got it to where it is today. So if I had to choose one overall, it'd probably be that of the creative piece. So.
Oh, that's a great answer. There's a lot of great answers. PC Players is always a great discussion because of all the people coming in. I quite like Esports Game of the Year, because I feel like it's usually one of the biggest games, but I always feel like it gets to the same discussion, go through, well, which has excelled, which is the greatest esport game of the year. So I think it's always a kind of a great one, although sometimes it's easier than other years. It's still fun, and I think there are a number of great awards in the Esports Awards. There are some I don't like. I'm not going to lie to you. There are some I'm not particularly enthused about, but that gets discussed every year. And we've already moved a ton this year about in terms of like, oh, this award will either be retired for now, or we'll bring in this new award, which we think is more representative of what we actually want to celebrate and champion in the awards. And that happens every year. I'm sure people don't really go back and look about how much it's changed. But I remember in the first couple of years, there being discussions about, it's 20 too many awards. And now there's just an absolute list of them that we try and get through every single time. So speaking of the history of the awards, let's talk a little bit about favorite moments. And you can take anything from the last 5 years. I know some of you have probably been watching, some of you have been part of the panel. And Skyler, I'll jump straight back to you and talk about what your favorite moments from the Esports Awards and the winners over the last 5 years.
Presenting with you was a pretty cool experience, by the way. Really appreciate that. No, seriously. Honestly, it stands out in person. Probably Richard Lewis, that speech. I think that was impactful. I thought that had a lot, and it was good to see that being said. But also, I think Simp winning was a big deal for me. Like it was like, all right, this kid's been doing a lot in his space, and just being able to see that, it's probably the Richard Lewis thing, just from a passion perspective. I don't think I've ever, you could tell what he meant, that he said, hey, we need to get back to the roots of things. And that meant a lot, because people that aren't scared to voice their opinion like that in this space are going to go quite a long way, right? As long as it's justified. So. Yeah,
100%. I can agree with you on that point as well. I was sitting next to him when he came back. He was a bit of a state, just how much emotion was poured into that one. Matt, what about yourself?
Yeah, I actually had the opportunity to attend the Esports Awards in 2019 in person at that event in Arlington. And honestly, I mean, being able to have so many esteemed people from so many disciplines and areas of the esports industry in one place is just an incredible sight to see. So was there for, Richard Lewis's speech, and have those moving moments happen on stage and unfold right in front of you is like incredible. So I cannot wait for us to get back to live events, and hopefully, we'll see if it ends up working out. Maybe we can do one for this year too.
I hope so. Kyle, what about yourself?
Well, what would have been the best moment would have been attending live. I think the perk of the panel is the chance to put on a tuxedo and eat a free dinner. But I'd have to say, watching Team Secret's sweep, Team of the Year, Coach of the Year, and Player of the Year, and I felt kind of bad because we had all these league fans really salty on Twitter. But at the end of the day, if there was a year, obviously the loss of TI is unfortunate, but he was just unstoppable. I mean, this kid played 18 different heroes in 21 games, all to win 7 grand finals 3-0. Like, that's absurd. I don't think that's people don't play 18 heroes in a year in other MOBAs. So I got a lot of respect for him. It was cool to see him win.
Yeah, and obviously the panel agreed with you, right? Like when that kind of came up, the panel were like, okay, wow, that is a very impressive kind of statistic and everything they had done this year. James O'Connor, what about yourself?
I'd have to be honest and say that I came in and voted and understood it, and I went back to my whole of building my company. So I didn't get to watch anything, honestly. So I'm buried in it. I hope I get to have the honor to participate in the future and experience it at a live event. I watched about 15 minutes of it, but I probably should have watched more. But soon.
Definitely. You'll love it. It's great fun, especially if we get to do it live this year. Fingers crossed. And EE, let's go to you now. And what's been your favorite moment?
Well, I definitely kind of echo a couple of my fellow panel members, saying Richard Lewis and things of that nature. But sadly, I'm too in that category where I haven't been there live. You know what I'm saying? Like I have got to get that experience live, and I'm not gonna pretend like that's not one of like the big selling points to being on the panel. Like it's awesome for an opportunity to do that, right? But you understand like there's so much work that comes to it. So when you really think about like those great moments that take place, no matter who wins, like there's a lot of things that go on behind the scenes to even get to that point. So I'm honored to be a part of that, but I definitely want to have like a seat in the live crowd. Hopefully this year will work out for us.
And I'll note that has nothing to do with the Esports Awards being an amazing show. I caught some glimpses of it. It's just I'll just tell you, when you see such amazing things that everyone else is doing and you're highly competitive, as I am, you get right back to building, because you got to get something that hopefully would be aspirational enough to be considered for the awards. And you see so many, like there's so many people out there that are killing it every day, that if I spent all my time watching, I wouldn't get anything done. So I get it. So anyway,
that's a fair point. And everybody's saying about putting on the Tux and Go to show. I hate that part. I can't. They won't let me turn up in a hoodie though. They just won't let you in.
Nah, man, the Texas barbecue after is the real spot. That's what you'd miss out on. Like I cannot wait.
Yeah, that's certainly a great part of it as well. I remember it being it used to be 45 minutes from where I live, and now it's across an entire ocean. But still very much fun as well for it at the same time. Let's move on then and talk a little bit about our next topic. And this is the process around panel members being finalists. And I'm kind of going to gloss over this one a little bit because I don't think everybody needs to weigh in. So I'll just kind of explain it to the people at home and kind of how it goes. If somebody is a finalist in it here, they usually will abstain and be out of it, and they don't really sell their own story. They rely on other members of the panel, which is one of the reasons, by the way, why the panel is so big and you have more than one expert in that area. If somebody's nominated for the host of the awards, they generally do not speak on the host of the awards. Sometimes they actually do chime in, and that's just to talk about other people who are nominated, to give them credit and talk about how fantastic they are. So it's a very simple process most of the time. If you are nominated for an award, you abstain from voting, and usually you don't take part in the discussions, and certainly not on behalf of yourself unless there is literally no information, which is becoming more and more rare as the awards gets better and better and more diverse in terms of people actually involved. So that one will cover that one. Let's talk about this one. This is a really big open-ended topic, and obviously I am curious of the time. So don't go too far into it. I know I'm going to have to lay you with a massive question. What do people need to stand out in modern day esports? Skyler, I'll jump this one to you.
That's a hard. Come on.
Well, that's the big. We could do this whole panel on that, but if you'd like to kind of try and sum it up just a little bit.
Fair enough. I mean, you say the cliche, be different, right? Find other avenues of marketing. In terms of just win, man. Like, what if you want to stand out, win, man? It's like that's what esports is at the beginning, right? Unless you're trying to build a culture around it, then which you will be through winning anyway. I'll just tell you win. That's all I'm going to say. Build what envy off of winning at the time, and that's it's the same thing. I think to be just competitive in everything you're doing. Like James, maybe don't watch the award show, but maybe for this one you should watch the award show. But it's one of those things to stay at it. I think 24/7. That's what it is.
100%. Yeah, no, I get that as well. Matt, I'll put the same question to you.
Yeah, I get asked this a lot because there's a lot of really, young aspiring people in mobile esports, right, that are in this for the first time. They're like, hey, what can I do? And I usually tell them you got to be one of two things. You got to be first at what you're doing and do something completely different that's never been done before, or you got to be the best, because there's people that have come before you, but you got to, outperform. You got to win these, events. You got to be the best digital marketing company that's out there, or whatever it is that you are specializing in, right? So I think the easiest way to stand out is to either, try to be a trailblazer and do something new or different that's never been done before, or you got to just do what's been done, but make sure that you're the best at it.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Kyle?
A couple things. I think you got to be authentic. No one can be you better than you. Work publicly when possible. Try to build your own personal monopoly on yourself. Like, create content. From what I've seen, whether you're a creator, whether you're on the biz end, whether you're in VC, it's what have you shipped? What do you ship? It doesn't matter how many people watch it. Make stuff. just keep making stuff. And then the other quality you got to have is just to be kind. This entire industry is built on relationships. Kindness is really easy. If you don't really like being kind, just do it in a self-serving manner, because you're much more likely to get help in your career. And realistically, none of us sit here if it weren't for the help we got along the way. So just be kind. And with that said, work hard. Like you got to work really hard. Maybe not 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, but it's a well-known fact. There are no weekends in esports. It's 11 p.m. here, but at least it's a work day. But yeah, we all know what that's like. There's definitely a grind, which might be a bad thing.
That 100% is grind, and I'm sure James is going to weigh in here and talk about his personal grind in building a business in esports.
So I see so many and amazing things of what Nadeshot does with his business, and how everybody internalizes and creates a product from a team or an influencer perspective, an event perspective. And so I just think about first of all, it's building a brand. And so I think that obviously Skyler is a great person to do that and to speak on that. But really it's about how to tell a story through a brand in the future. And there's some of the things that we're learning about, and then to create experiences and how do you make people feel. So I think what the Knights, and just specifically how we're trying to get out there and how we plan to essentially, I feel like, start the company, is through cool experiences and events and bringing people together. That's my goal. And that's what I want us to be known for. But I think right now how people are being known for is amazing content and winning. I think winning big cash prizes. I think they're doing really cool content. I mean, you watch a Dr. Disrespect stream and it's just insane. Like, it's so sick. So like, he invests so much time into his product. And also just getting out there and creating, I'd say. If I were to put it one word, I'd say it's create something.
That's fair enough. No, I think that's a kind of a great way to put it as well. Iggy, last but not least, what do you think people need to do to stand out in Monday esports?
Definitely least. I mean, I feel like I should just say all of the above. I can't really top any of that. I will add on though, personality, right? Like, even if you're not winning everything, like, you're probably going to be in a situation where if you are placing, you'll be able to like get an interview and stuff like that. Like, just have that big personality that people like, be fan engaging. And then on the side too, like make content. You know what I'm saying? Like, honestly, I noticed, like, at least for Smash, like, people who stream and make YouTube content, like, if you watch a tournament, those people like show up, they transfer over so easily, and they just cultivate so much like interaction in the chat and like so much hype when they're on there playing. You know what I'm saying? So like, that's really like another good way, because obviously people invest like, oh well, this guy must be pretty dope. He's got all these fans in here rooting for him. So
yeah, can I just chime real fast? Drives me nuts every time a player denies an interview. Like,
yeah,
winning is important. Yeah, everybody wants to win, but end of the day, the goal's to succeed, and you don't get there by just training off in a dungeon and just saying, I'm going to be the best, and like ignore the world. And I love seeing personality. I wish we had more of it. And that if you're watching, like, be yourself. Talk some trash too. Come on, Smash does it right. There's some pop-offs. I wish we had more of that in PC.
No, I think that's a great point. The personality, and I like to say, so I've helped with players all over the years in business aspects and all the other parts of it as just being part of the industry. And you are right; it is very undervalued. Things like giving interviews. And don't get me wrong, right? There are introverts, there are people who hate doing it, but here's the thing: nobody's asking you to be this huge, bubbly personality and love shouting at people and getting what. Just be you, but put that on screen. I know a caster friend of mine who I consider one of the best casters in all of esports, but was criminally undervalued because while they were technically incredibly gifted at what they did, their personality wasn't coming across. And everybody could tell that they were good, but they weren't the favorite person for a lot of people because personality is a big thing. Obviously, that's just on-camera talent. But you are right. Same thing goes for all kinds of branding, goes for the organizations themselves, goes for the players double. Because if you're having an off year, then you may never get back into it if nobody knows who you are. If you aren't speaking through your gameplay just good enough by being the best in the world, then you need a little bit of an edge, and people have to have a reason to connect with you, right? Otherwise, you just end up watching faceless figures all the time. But no, I think that's a very great point as well. So we kind of moved back into a part about the panel now, and this is something I've been pushing for quite a few years, right? Supporting info, right? Why is it important for finalists? And this doesn't always refer to the players because their histories are well known, but things like the supporting agencies and other things we've had during the year. Why is it important for finalists to submit portfolios? And which categories is this so essential for? Skyler, I know we've been talking about it, and I'm sure in the creative side as well, you need to look at portfolios.
100%. Because you're like, you as the person, the individual, the finalist, you're embedded in your work all the time. So you think other people are seeing it as much as you are, and they could be clueless on it, right? So it's the only way for us to see what's going on, and that's like, for us last year, I remember we crammed out a video because I knew I couldn't talk about it. Like what type of dude would I be going in there saying like, oh yeah, this is what all we've done, so you gotta show people. And I think the best way to do that is through literally just, hey, put it all out there. I love the way that the cosplay section did, actually. Cosplay did a great job showcasing a lot of their work, right? Mind you, didn't know who actually made the outfits and who didn't, right? Had that issue. But at the same time, just seeing the end result was beautiful, mainly towards photography, right? Like, and if there's no events, throw some product photography on there. Throw some, like, I don't care if you're taking photos outside with your mom, like walking the dog, whatever. Just throw something on there for us to see, like, what you're doing in the space, because that's the biggest thing is a lot of people last year, one thing that bothered me on the creative side is they would get these nominations, but there wouldn't be the time put in. So it was hard for us. We had to go look and scour the internet for anything we could to find just any projects or information. And some people lean too heavy on one body of work as well. I think you really got to showcase your variety, right? Showcase that you do more than just that one thing if you have more than that one thing. So.
No, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more. It's something I've pushed for quite a year because we've had things, various award categories like, supporting agency of the year, and we've had hardware provider of the year, and all these other brands that come in. And we're sitting there, and as a panel, we're all pretty knowledgeable. We're like, well, I actually saw Intel do X, Y, and Z at this event, and I'm sitting there going, well, we can all kind of guess with the way we've interacted with them, but we all are in verticals, right? Esports is not just one thing; it is many. So for a lot of the time, we're sitting there, go, well, how much have they contributed during the year? And if you're asking this for a company you probably aren't involved with, right, that people aren't on the panel, then you're going to need to put that stuff forward. And this year I actually took a hard line with it, and I'm probably one of the harshest on the panel for it. So if you don't like it, you can blame me. I'm perfectly happy with that. And I said, I don't ever feel comfortable voting for a company or anybody who needs to submit a portfolio that doesn't want to put in the effort to help us along and give us a reason to vote for them, right? Because it's all well and good saying, oh, do your research. Well, I can reach your website blurb, but I don't actually know what you've done, because anybody can write a fancy blurb on a website or put out a smarmy press release. I didn't know the hard facts that go into some of these categories to accurately judge them properly. And it's one of the things that I do feel is incredibly essential and becoming more and more essential. Bear in mind, the panel members we've brought in, right? We have a creative panel for this very reason, to help decide the creative. We've brought in the mobile side. We've brought in EE helping with our fighting game. Carl does the Dota, right? Like, there is a lot that we bring in to try and do as much expert knowledge as possible. But it isn't always plausible have an expert unless we have members of that company, and then that becomes a conflict of interest, and it's a bit weird. So supporting info is a very important thing. So that's my little rant on that. We'll get that one out of the way. I'm going to throw it to Matt now, because this one is pretty much in your wheelhouse. Breakthrough of mobile esports, and why is that so exciting, Matt?
Man, I tell you what, it was just insane to watch mobile be represented at the Esports Awards this past year. Just the growth rate that we're witnessing in this industry is unbelievable. And it finally came to fruition by recognizing some of the best in this industry at this last award show. And, I think a lot of people just don't see the growth or the numbers that this industry has right now. And it's to be expected, right? Because it's almost like this new industry that's coming from a grassroots level up. And if you're not in it, it's easy to miss it, right? But it would actually shock you. So I was looking at the esports hours watched as like a key metric for how large this esports industry is on the mobile side. In 2018, it was 15 million esports hours watched for mobile esports. Just a year later, it was nearly 100 million, went from 15 to 100. And this past year in 2020, it went over 400 million esports hours watched on mobile esports titles. And so that type of growth and trajectory, first of all, is insane. And then you have cases like Loud, which is a really prominent mobile esports organization in Brazil, primarily primarily focused in Free Fire. They were the first esports organization of any platform to reach 1 billion views on YouTube. And they did that back in May of last year. And they, were the first to accomplish that, even though some other esports organizations had about 15 years worth of a head start. Yet that is kind of the trajectory that mobile esports allows for. Since that time, by the way, they have continued to grow and are nearly pushing 2 billion, whereas the largest traditional platform like PC or console-based esports orgs are still hovering around that 1 billion mark. So just in a league of their own as far as YouTube views go. So I think it's just a matter of time before it's really, accepted by people in PC and console as, legitimate esports or whatever. And that kind of stigma starts to erode, but it will erode, and it's going to erode over time because of results.
No, that's fair enough. Like, it is something that has grown massively. And I don't know how much I can say moving forward, but I know that the fact the Esports Awards has bigger plans for mobile esports as well. Probably can't say too much on it because I don't know exactly what's been announced or what hasn't, but there are great things in the pipeline for the future. So our last official category we're moving on now to, before we get to any questions from the comments on YouTube. If you want to quickly kind of jump in the questions now, will be a great time. This one is another big one, and we have touched on it just a little bit. The growth of esports on social, how important it is for professionals in the industry to have a large social presence. And I'll throw this back into EE now as we go through everyone for it.
Well, I think it's tremendous. Like social media, just in general, like just the way it evolves. Like I'm a big sports guy too, and I'm telling you, like the way that you see people doing like collaborations with like these athletes, like for instance, like I do, NBA 2K, like seeing players get opportunities, like play people like Kevin Durant, like one of the best players in the world. It's just insane to me because you wouldn't think like these worlds would cross over. But I think a lot of times too, like we forget that these are younger guys too, right? Like somebody who's like 30 years old, like when they were kind of growing up, like social media was kind of booming too, right? So they're going to be able to kind of connect and, get that nice cross pollination, which I think is really important. Like I don't think half the things I would be anywhere without like social media, like Twitter, Instagram, like just it's just such a good networking and marketing tool. And it's really just another way to just get your name out there. Again, that goes back to like my point about personality. Like you don't necessarily have to win the event, but if you're amusing, entertaining, and fan engaging person, like that'll probably shine through in your social media as well, which I think a lot of people appreciate.
Yeah, I get that as well. And James, this is probably a unique viewpoint for you, building your own company and entering the space in terms of social media.
So I'd like to define social media as a third-party platform first, and then having first-party data. I think when you look at traditional sports teams and media properties, you see them having and building the infrastructure to have their own data, and then they aggregate and integrate OAuth to third-party data. So I think it's really cool that influencers and players have their own, social profiles. I would say for companies that are focused on, so I think there's two buckets. And so I think for us, I'm focusing on the blend of first party and third party. If you look at our socials, they're not as focused on as probably other groups. And then I would ask them the question, how much data does a company who has a couple million followers on it know who those people are, and how do they serve that customer, and how do they grow the lifetime value of that customer and retarget them to get them to do 17 really cool experiences and tie them together. So if you don't have that, then you just post on social, and the conversion on social is like 1%. So like the people that have 3 million followers actually have 1% of 3 million on their engagement. So that's what I spend all my time thinking about in my basement. So anyway, so it's just a thought on like, what are we doing on third-party apps, and how are we integrating those third-party apps to our first-party solutions and building businesses in the space that can grow lifetime value.
That's fair enough. I think that's a very encompassing answer as well. Kyle, you've done a number of jobs in esports, and how do you feel about social media?
I think you, once you get to a certain point, sometimes you can get too focused on like growth. I don't think you'll feel any better whether you have 10,000 or 100,000 or 1 million people following you on Twitter, especially nowadays with I think owning your own content is actually more important. I'm upset in a way that I've been writing like on Medium instead of my own website. I think that, with the rise of paid newsletters like Substack, NFTs now suddenly a thing, curating like true fans has been a talking point for decades, but you can now better engage with your true fans than ever before. And I think that while previously strategies focused on quantity generated of content, be on all the platforms, 7 posts per day across them all, I think nowadays people respond better to quality because the opportunity cost for content has never been higher. There is always something else to be watching, consuming, and you want to make sure that when you push stuff out there, it's worthwhile, not just a task you have to do to feel like you're maintaining your growth.
Yeah, that's fair enough. That's a kind of a great viewpoint on social media as you go through the industry as well. You are right. A lot of people kind of go too narrow on their focus on that, especially when they first enter the industry, and it's basically all they ever think about or talk about. Matt, let's move to you then. Talk about social media and its impact on professionals.
So I can definitely speak from a mobile perspective too, because I think that that's one of the advantages that this industry has, to be honest with you, because there's a lot of mobile first social media platforms that just have this huge pool of mobile gamers out there ready to be tapped into. And it's also ones like Instagram where hashtags and discoverability is actually used as a normal part of, content consumption, more so than other social media platforms are. And so actually, if you do put yourself out there, put some videos or posts about your lifestyle and stuff like that, you can build a following pretty organically, actually, and probably faster than maybe more established or older scenes might be versus like a younger mobile first fan base. And then also, I think we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg as far as what mobile content looks like in this industry. There's some great examples like EVOS Esports out in Southeast Asia, running basically an esports organization with Instagram as their primary platform. TikTok is on the horizon as well for esports orgs, ramping that up. So I think we're going to have some really innovative stuff coming out of the mobile esports industry, and I can't wait to see who's put forward as a contender for the creative panel in this next year.
100%. And last but not least, Skyler, I know you have so much to do within this space for social media, so I'd love to get your thoughts on it.
Appreciate it. I think from a personal perspective, it's cool to keep up with friends, right? Like, there's no way.
No, that's true.
Right. Like, I don't know how you guys respond to texts and stuff, but I'm too busy to do that, So it's like, it's cool to just be able to scroll through and see, oh, wow, you're doing this, you're doing that, you're crushing that, get that alike. But from a business perspective, I wanted to prove a point with one of the creative agencies that we have is we don't have a website. I did it for a reason. We still don't have one. Don't plan on making one. Maybe next year. I don't know. We wanted to see if we could build a business without a website. And we've done it through word of mouth and just social media. And that was kind of an internal, proven thing. Like, hey, let's see how much the community backs you, right? Let's see how many people will talk about you through that. But on the other side, if you're running like an e-commerce business, social media is everything. You get to share everything right away with people and say, hey, this is what we're doing now. Can you show some love or hate us? Whatever you're going to do with it, just be there. Be there to witness it. And I just think social media is one of the biggest things for an individual to have power to voice their opinion if something's going wrong. To be able to say something like a rebuttal against an accusation. Like there's so many things that it can be used for. And I think it's just being a voice. I think having that social media presence is always a powerful thing. And I always suggest building it. And building through what everyone said this whole thing was just be yourself, right? Be yourself and speak on it. And if you're building things, let people know you're building things. Because there's a lot of people that don't care. There's a lot of people that want to learn how to build things. I'm a big advocate for social media when it comes to business in general. So there it is.
Awesome. All right. Well, I believe that's the end of our main topics. There are a few questions that have come in from the YouTube comments. So to kind of break with tradition here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw some of these out there, and whoever wants to kind of take it and give us a quick answer, that would be fantastic. What game surprised you with development of their esports scene? And while you're quickly ruminating over that, my biggest one for this, by the way, and this has been this going back a few years in the panel, I think Rainbow Six is a great example of esports development. Not a great launch for Rainbow Six Siege when it came out. Didn't do great. But then when we actually went and looked, and this happened in a panel discussion for one of the awards years back, their growth and what they've been doing year on year, it was pretty phenomenal. Their development of being able to not only rescue a game that didn't have the great start in life, but to continuously build on an esports space that was still, a very complicated arena with the amount of first-person shooters around there. Anybody want to weigh in on this? What kind of games surprised you with their esport development? Oh, James, looks like he wants to jump in.
Yeah, well, I would talk about Valorant, but I'd just like to back up into what you said. The reason why I believe that Rainbow Six Siege did so well was because they developed a partnership with teams. Mm-hmm. And they basically, when you look at prize money and you see $100 million, some of that is for earned media value. So ask yourself, why is a game developer doing that? Well, they want to drive daily active users and get people to play it. Mm-hmm. And so how do they get earned media? Had everybody talking about $100 million prize pool for about a year and a half. And that goes, and that structure doesn't really support the ecosystem to execute. But then you go to Valorant and people are seeing the game and some of the strategies that Riot uses to support the community. And so they're pretty smart about it. And so I think the question for me, obviously, I think it's Valorant because they took the ethos of the game that I was with for 20 years and redid it in a different way. So I'm super excited about the investment that they're doing and the infrastructure that they have. But I think it's really about how game developers work with partners strategically and cohesively to create an ecosystem that works for a lot of parties.
Awesome. All right. I think that's a great answer. I am curious, kind of worried about the time because we have gone a little bit over. So there are 2 questions in the chat, both from Mike Ashford, who we saw at the beginning of this, right? When are the Esports Awards 2021? They are on November the 20th. Put that date in your calendar. That's when you'll see the Esports Award. The other question is, who is your favorite Esports Awards employee? There is no way I'm answering that. They all put up with way too much noise from me. So I am appreciative of everyone at the awards. But that pretty much wraps up everything for this. So thank you for joining. We are very excited that nominations will be going live for the Esports Awards on our first Spotlight show next week on Wednesday the 31st. So keep an eye out for that one. Now, before we head over to the Zoom link for networking, which is in the bio again, by the way, keep an eye and jump on that if you want to. We'd like to thank our keynote speaker, Mike Ashford. I'd also like to thank all of our amazing speakers today for giving us the time and the insight that they have so wonderfully provided. Skyler Johnson, MobileMatt Rutledge, Phil Visu, James O'Connor, and Kyle Freedman. We have our next Esports Leadership Summit coming up in April. So be sure to look out for our emails and join the Esports Leadership Series LinkedIn group, which has also been posted in the comments below. So you can keep up with everything you need to there. Thanks again for joining, and make sure you join us in some networking breakout rooms on the Zoom link in the YouTube bio below. We'll see you in just a few minutes.